our last session of Groundswell 18, and we're welcoming back to hear again Greg's talk. Well, he'll say something different, I know he will. Yesterday, Greg spoke for an hour, and then there was an hour break, and 1 hour later, I came back in for the next talk, and there was still this buzz of people around him, all asking questions. Greg was still talking. So there's so much he can say that's exciting and intriguing, and I had to push them off the floor, and that's how much in demand he is. So here he is again. Please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to give a talk today. I've changed out some of the slides from yesterday because there were some things in there that we talked about in the pasture walk yesterday. And so you'll be able to see a lot better kind of what I'm talking about on some of the issues we talked. How many of y'all were in this talk yesterday? Okay, how many were? So there's quite a few newbies here. That's good. So, give you a little background. We did everything wrong for many years in Missouri. We're from the Midwest. I bought the land, bought the cattle, bought the equipment, me and the bank. And after a couple years, it wasn't going so well. And I had a good job in town. And I want to go into that even further. You shouldn't feel bad about having a job in town when you're first starting out. It's pretty tough to cash flow right off the ground a fledgling grazing operation without some help, unless you have wealthy parents. Well, I didn't have any of that. And but anyway, long story short, after a couple years of doing it wrong, I loved this. I loved the grass. I loved the animals. I loved the lifestyle, but we weren't making any money. And I'm like, man, there's got to be a way. And I read an article, and the article said your sole purpose in life should not be to own the land, but to control it. And what this guy was talking about is lease it. If you buy land, it ties up too much of your equity, and you don't have anything left to develop the farm. And so we've done that. Today we have 16 farms. They make up 1,620 acres. We own 4 of those farms. And life is good again. We're out of debt, but we focused on one thing, folks, and that is the biology in the soil and the grass. It's not about the animals. The animals are a tool to harvest your sweat and your labor, but it's not about the animal. It's about the soil. Everybody, we're grass farmers. Well, are you? I like to say we're microbe farmers, okay? So, if we feed the microbes will feed our livestock. And if it's a good, healthy soil, it's going to be good, healthy food that we feed our communities. So, it's a mirror reflection. If you take in junk and you feed your animals junk, you're going to eat junk when you eat those animals. It's pretty simple. So we call these our microbe feeders. And these animals are rotated around our farms. This is one of our bigger farms. It's about 260 acres. When we first leased this in 2001, we've been able to fasten 11 farms onto here. They're all touch each other now. You know how cool that is? When you do a cattle drive, you can just go to the next farm without getting on a gravel road or a piece of blacktop. It's pretty nice. So that's what we've done. And a lot of people, I think, focus on land. If you live in an area and you've got a 10-acre field that nobody's doing anything with, and you can walk the cattle maybe through a neighbor or down the road ditch to get to it, go get it. But Greg, it's only 10 acres. I don't care. Those animals are off your farm for 2 or 3 days, 3 or 4 times a year. Your farm can grow. It's all about growing. Rest, recovery. Our goal is to make a good living grazing animals. It's just pretty darn simple. Don't get sidetracked by all this other stuff. And folks, you hear a lot about being sustainable today. Oh, I want to be sustainable. Do you? Well, if Jan and I were sustainable, I wouldn't be up here talking to you today. because we have leased, every farm we have leased has been degraded. I mean, they've been abused. They've been hayed and hayed and hayed, and no fertilizer, no lime put on them. And so when we got them, they were junk. Nobody wanted them. So if we'd have been sustainable, what would that say? We were just sustaining a degraded resource. We don't want to be sustainable. We want to be regenerative. Build. Think about building. Soil uppens. Let's build the soil up. Okay? That's where your future is. Add a mob of animals, ruminant animals, start trampling carbon on the soil surface, followed by a full recovery period. Keep that in your brain, okay? This is what you can do with animals. This is a farm we now own. It was solid broom sedge. Do you all grow broom sedge here in New England? Okay, broom sedge dominates on land that won't grow anything but cedar trees and moss. Okay? In other words, it's bankrupt. Done. You can put sheep on there, you can put goats, you can put cattle. They're going to starve to death because they're not going to eat it. But by trampling that and going in the wintertime and bringing in purchased inputs, hay, and unrolling it, we've turned these farms around. What was cool, folks, is we started out being custom grazers. So we didn't have any money. We couldn't buy livestock. We had these farms, okay? But we didn't have the money to stock them. So we started getting paid so much a day per cow. Every month in my mailbox, I would run out to the mailbox. Because before it was bills, now there was checks in there from the cattle owners. And so they would buy my hay for me in the fall for their cows. So I would put that hay that other people bought on other people's land, grazing there, and they were paying me to feed their hay on our farms. It's pretty cool. People say, how do you sleep at night? I said, I sleep very well. Okay? We have this idea that our farms need to look nice and manicured, more like a golf course, in the rough where some people hit the ball. I used to hit them in it a lot. That taller stuff, but it's all the same height. There's no weeds in it. Folks, I'm sorry. This weed right here in America is called giant ragweed. It'll get about that tall, okay? It's one of the most palatable forages you can put in a cow, okay? There's people spraying that stuff, trying to kill it, and we're growing beef with it. So be careful. Oh, it's a darn weed. I got to kill it. Well, maybe you don't want to kill it. Why is that weed there? It's filling up a spot on your soil that was bare. It was bare. Mother Nature hates having her skin bare. She's going to put a weed there every time. Most of the predators are gone in the United States. Where we're at, we do have the coyote and the bobcat, but we don't have those. I'm kind of glad we don't. Ian still has to deal with those, but what we're saying there is we have to be the predator in our herd. Guys, ladies, you've got to pick out those animals that don't work. That bottom 10%, this is going to go against everything that you've been taught, this next sentence, but I'm going to tell you anyway. If you have a heifer at the end of your calf crop and she's about 4 to 5 inches taller than all of her herd mates, sell her to your neighbor or eat her, do something with her, but don't make her a cow. Because all she's doing, she's a freak of nature. She's pushing your whole herd toward bigger. Folks, in nature, it's all about average. It's not about bigger. And if they go bigger than what your farm can support, guess what you've got? Purchased inputs. You're going to have to go buy some energy to feed that cow in the wintertime, or she's not going to breed back. She may calve the next spring, but she's going to be too thin, and she's not going to cycle back on time, and she's going to be open. So those great big ones in nature, guess what happens to them? That dude right there catches them because they can't keep up. When the stampede comes in, nature takes them out. This is something we do occasionally. So we're using our animal mob there. There's about 380 animals in there. That's counting the baby calves and everything. And they're only on there for about 10 minutes. This is called an exclusion zone. So you can use your herd of animals to do several things. Let's say you don't have any clover in your pasture. It's all grass. And you'd like a bit more clover in there. You can tighten your animals up in a small area just using temporary fence. So when you move your animals, you want this fence already set up. Put them in there for about 10 minutes. Let them just beat the stuffing out of it, poop on it, pee on it. And they'll get mad at you. They'll bawl, oh, move us, move us. Well, we do. We move them into the next one. And what was neat about this is we did this for about, 40 minutes. We had 4 paddocks set up. Folks, when we brought the cattle back, and we were putting a hammer on Sericea lespedeza, which is an invasive in the Midwest. It's coming in, taking over people's farm. It's not very palatable forage. I wanted to see what I could do to it. Anyway, 60 days went by. We came back to that paddock. This wire was gone, and I gave him the whole paddock. Now, we didn't give this side of the paddock that treatment, just that side. When that mob entered that ridge, every single animal went right to this section we put that density on. They grazed that first, and then they came over here and started grazing. Why did they go to that side first? Clover? It was the energy that they put in that soil, the energy of the hooves. We call it bruising the soil. If you can bruise the soil with a cloven hoof, you're waking up the microbes that are living on the root hairs. They all start eating each other. Okay? The manure and the urine that was put down in there, folks, it looked like I took a broom, a floor broom, and just covered the whole area with runny manure. It was everywhere. I probably put down 200 pounds of N right there. I don't know, but it was a lot. And you could tell the next time we came in there, the plants were greener. Oh, here was the big one. The plant spacing was closer. Remember this. Fire promotes plant spacing. If you want your plants to be further apart, throw a fire on it. If you want your plants to come closer together, which you do as a grazer, graze it. And I was a firebug. I used to throw fire on everything. When I leased the farm, that's the first thing I did. I threw fire on it. Dummy. I had all that nice carbon there, and what did I do? I threw a match on it. Poof. Put all that carbon in the air when I could have put it on the soil. Continuous, this is my neighbor, this is us, this is winter grazing. That is fescue. I think fescue is the workhorse of our farm. We have probably 60% fescue in about all of our pastures, maybe a little higher than that. The rest is different clovers, lespedeza, bird's foot trefoil. We have cocksfoot. We have brome, timothy, bluegrass, red top, big bluestem, Indian grass, Gama grass. We've got a whole mixture of stuff in there. So when people say, oh, you got fescue, well, yeah, we got that, but we've got a lot of other stuff, and I like that. You all see a little difference here in what's going to happen to my neighbor when he gets the 3-inch rain? It's going to run off. You can go down to the bottom of our farm when we get a 3-inch rain, you can't hardly see any water coming off of it. It's catching it. It's like a big sponge. When you walk on our soil, it feels soft under your feet. Learn to visualize what your feet are telling you when you're walking on your land. It should have some spongy effect to it, not walking on concrete. So this is the recovered paddock. It was fully recovered. This would be the part of the farm that we left off in the spring. In other words, we were grazing around the farm. It all went to seed in front of us. We stopped. We came back to where we started and started grazing that again. And we let this go till July. Oh, man, it looks rank, doesn't it? But look at this. So the cows trampled that at a stocking density of 100,000 pounds of beef per acre. for 12 hours, and then this came back. This is what the young man's holding up. Just took the cows out. And then this is what's coming back now. So all that grass that young man was holding is laying down here on the ground. We covered that whole farm with this beautiful mulch. Okay? And look at the clover exploding out of there. I didn't plant that clover. Folks, what you're trying to do is get the plants tall enough that when the cows step on them, they're breaking the sap flow back to the root. If you can get that sap flow broken back to the root, you've got carbon. And you have got tons of carbon. Tons of carbon. That's feeding our soil biology. Now, we had a group from Arkansas, and they saw that and like, Greg, why in the heck did you take the cows out of here? My God, look at the grass. You wasted it. I'm like, yeah, you can call it waste if you want. I call it black gold. And this is why right here. Look at that. I mean, that soil was just greasy. There was worms, there was spiders, there was aphids. There was one little guy crawling along there. He was about that long, had about 40 legs on each side. And he's booking, he sees me, and he's got antennas with little hairs on the end of his antennas. He looks up, he's like, I'm getting out of here. There is so much life. There's so much life in the soil. It's just, God, you don't need TV. Just go out in the pasture, pull it back, and watch the life. But look at this. There's the new seedlings coming up. It's a perfect bed for new seeds. So my cows beat that up just enough. I got a little bit of dirt showing. You got to remember, you're working with a cloven hoof animal, so when they step down, the hooves go open. They're constantly massaging the top of your ground, okay? You can't do that with a tractor. It's not the same. If you graze a pasture, if you take one pasture, graze half of it, and you mow the other half, you tell me which one goes back the quickest. It'll always be the grazed paddock, and here's why. When the cow reaches out and grabs that leaf, they don't bite it off. It's the tongue. It's a ripping action, and it sends a shock wave down the plant to the root hairs, and all the microbes in the root hairs are shocked, and they all start eating each other. When you mow it off, there's no pulling action on the plant. So there's no explosion of life in the soil. Look at that. This is an earthworm castle. This guy sat there and ate all night long, pooping out that beautiful litter that the cattle trampled on the ground. Folks, that right there is potting soil. And the worms have the unique ability to source lime as they go through your soil. They're actually depositing a little bit of lime in there. The pH of that darn thing is 7. You're going to grow some beautiful grass. You're going to have some healthy animals. You might even be able to quit that that town job if you keep doing this. I'm serious. I've been able to do that. I got to tell you a great story. I was so focused on this, folks, that Jan and I were not married yet. We were dating, but I had it on every single thing on my house. I had it in my billfold. I had it at work. I had it on my computer screen. And it said this: I wanted to be a grass farmer. I wanted to be a full-time grass farmer by age 50. And I'll never forget, we had a lady who had a flat tire, and she asked me to use the bathroom in my house and the phone. So she came in, she said, can I use the bathroom? She walked in, she came out, she'd read that. Grass farmer. She's thinking marijuana. And you can just tell, she's just like, all right, I think I want to get out of here. She was just shocked. I didn't even try and explain to her. This is grazing winter stockpile, so this strip right here would have been where the cattle were at the day before. So folks, in the wintertime, we go across our farm twice. We'll go across and take the tips off, just the very best, and that'll usually get us till about February 1st, going over all the farms. Then we'll come back and we'll get that again. The next time, you got to remember this, folks, on that first pass, around your farm, they're taking the very best. Most of the energy in that stockpile is gone. But if you give them a bigger area the next time you come around, you might even have some hay stockpiled up here on the hill that you can roll out to supplement that. But give them a bigger area because they can make up for that energy being gone by eating more of it. And boy, they do good. Our cows have a smile on their face when we give them that. If we give them a bale, they're not very happy. If we put them on hay for more than 1 or 2 days, you can just see it. They're not very happy. They like to graze. This is broken soil, so this would have been soybean. I've lived in this community my whole life. I don't think he ever grew anything there but corn, but mostly soybeans, because soybeans are cheaper to grow. And he didn't do a very good job with his weed control. He just kind of combined whatever came up, which was mainly cockleburs. And so when I leased the farm from the new owner, I said, look, you're not putting soybeans down here anymore. Get that guy out of here. Because he was letting somebody just soybean it. And so that's what came up. Well, I had the cows eating it, and I made them eat it. They ate it. They ate it. They ate it. They ate it. And I'm really patting myself on the back. I thought I'd whip the burrs. I didn't. The burrs came back. Why did they come back? It's because I grazed off the good grass under those burrs first. There was some grass in there about that tall. Those cows took the good grass down to the dirt. Then they ate the cocklebur. Was I doing anything? Absolutely not. Because those burrs, once there was bare ground, look out, here they came. So you've got to put pressure on your weedy areas. If you have a weedy area, go around it in the spring on your first pass. Don't graze it. Let your beneficial grasses come up and bury those weeds. Because the most vulnerable time of a weed is in the springtime when he's got his little head sticking up. And you put a bunch of good grass over the top of him, he's done. About 2 years of that crap, he can't take it. Folks, that field is beautiful today. You can't even find a cocklebur in it. We didn't spray it. We didn't mow it. We used livestock and good management. Here's some of the silvopasture. So silvopasture, the definition of silvopasture is the integration of livestock into trees, forage, and animals. So you're doing all three with one. And here we're taking a fungal-dominated area that was all pretty much timber, junky timber. We left the nicer saw logs and some smaller ones for regeneration later on. And this was solid oak leaves under here. There wasn't any grass growing in there. There wasn't any sunlight. So we took the trees out and we unrolled hay in the wintertime. It's crazy. So we took a fungal and we introduced bacteria being hay. The cattle pooped on it, peed on it, stepped on it, wasted a lot of it, which you don't want them to eat it all. You want them to waste about 30%. And it's unbelievable. There's some of it. So this would have been a brushy draw that we did the same thing to. Folks, those cattle, when it's 100 degrees in Missouri and you stand in the sun and you just sweat. It's like somebody poured water over you. Those cattle need shade. So we've taken some areas that grew oak leaves, nothing, there's no forage, and now we've got these beautiful savannas spread around our farm. That is our mineral program. We do a cafeteria style. So there's 16 boxes. There's 8 on each side, and that rubber top is lifted up by the cattle. And it's got runners on it, so I just hook it onto my quad, and I pull it to the next paddock. So it's moved with the cows every day. We move our cows twice a day, and we've played around with really high densities just to see what we could do. We've actually got our cows up to 2 million pounds. 2 million pounds of beef per acre. Folks, I don't recommend anybody in this room doing that. Because when you do that, you need to move them about every 20 minutes. And if you want to sit out there all day long and move cattle, more power to you. But the cattle go to that mineral feeder and they source what's missing out of the forage. They poop out about 80 to 85% of the mineral goes out the butt. So over time, whatever's missing in each paddock, the cows are putting it back out there. Whoa. Okay. Where do you start? Well, there's a saying, you can't save the world until you save yourself. And in grazing terms, what that means is when you're saving the world, you're trying to trample some litter on the ground, you're building organic matter, you're maybe putting some pressure on brush, you're trying to get more diversity, using the animals as a tool. You've got to be careful. Because those animals are live, breathing animals. They're not a dozer, they're not a disc, they're not a planter, they're not a baler. They breathe, and they also need to get pregnant. So animal performance, meaning we want to make sure those cows are fed correctly every day while we're doing this. So grazing immature plants, we stop doing that. That'll kill you. 40% of your pasture growth is gone for the entire season. If you go in the spring and you can only see 4 inches of growth, and you start grazing, oh my God, it's going to kill you. It's going to kill you. Because what's a plant trying to do in the spring? What's the purpose of a plant? To put on seed, to reproduce so it's there next year. And I made this talk yesterday. I said, what does the plant do when it's stressed? It's the same thing people do when they come back from war. They breed. They repopulate. It's the same thing on a plant. So we're finding now with our healthier plants, we don't get seed heads immediately. The plants aren't threatened. They're sending up more leaves. Okay? The other advantage of silvopasture, they found out, is that the silvopasture, you have shaded grass under the trees, that's higher quality feed. Why is that higher quality? It's got lower lignin in it because it doesn't get full penetration from the sunlight all day long. And also the cool season plants grow 2 weeks longer in the springtime in these savannas before they put on seed. So that's worth a lot of money. So we forget about the seed heads. If we see seed heads in front of us, we turn around and we start back up here. Right where we started in the spring, we start our rotation over again. There's one that's been trampled. We're gone. We left a lot of armor over the soil. There's no way that I can get a rain and it's all going to run off. I've got all that beautiful material there. So we graze every day, twice a day. We're putting the trample litter on the soil. The proper gut feel on the left side of the animal. This is critical, folks. It's right there. I wish my pointer does work. Right there. And on this one, because she's red, it's harder to see. This one's not as bad a shape as that one. And people look at that photo and they're like, Greg, look at the grass they've got. Why is that cow limited? I just moved them. You didn't see the paddock I took them out of. This is my first year of mob grazing. Guys, ladies, I have made every mistake there is. Ian, the old guy from Africa, Ian Mitchell-Ennis, that helps me with our grazing school every year, he was very diplomatic the first year. He goes, Greg, you might try leaving just a little bit more litter behind. He didn't call me a dumbass. He just told me to leave a little bit more. Here's an even worse picture. This is not my cow. This is out on the East Coast. But look at that. Folks, that cow's not going to breed. She cannot breed. So when you move your cows, position yourself on the left side of the gate, or if you don't have a gate and you're just picking the reel up and moving it back, put that reel down at about 30 feet and come back and get on this side of them. It's not on the other side. It's if you're sitting on the cow, it's the left side of the animal. Position yourself so you can watch that mob go through in front of you. And it's usually going to be the very back animals that come through are the ones that are probably limited. Now, the younger animals are the really old ones. If they're all limited, you're doing something wrong. You should have been there 2 hours sooner to move them or give them a bigger area. Because if you continue to do that all summer long, you're going to end up with a lot of open cows that didn't breed back. The worst part is your calves are going to get pink eye. You're going to get foot rot. You're going to get pneumonia. And that's because that cow cannot pass the proper vaccines in her milk to that calf to stay healthy. That calf looks pretty bad. I mean, he's not filled out. He's struggling because the cow's struggling. I can spot that now. There's a fat one. See, they should be flush. They should be flush. You shouldn't be able to see any impression sticking in the side of those animals. But that's all right. You can make that mistake for a day or so, but fix it. So what level of density? I always start at a lower stocking density. I tell people, don't start out up here at 100,000 pounds. I'll give you a story. I have a really good friend. He's passed away now, but he had 300 acres. He had about 60 cows. He grazed it all year long, constantly. I said, Kenneth, I said, if I bring the post over here, I'm going to donate you the post. Would you buy a piece of wire we'll split your farm into? I got to open a gate. I'm like, would you do that? All right, I'll do it. So he went and paid $60 for a roll of wire. And we split his farm all the way down the middle. 4 weeks later, he called. We put all the cows on one side. 4 weeks later, he called me and said, Greg, you cannot believe what's happening. I'm like, yeah, I can. I went over there, and I mean, he had about this much grass on the side where the cows weren't. All he did was open the gate. He let all 60 head go on the other 150 acres. He closed the gate. He had a pond on each side. He was the happiest chap. You'd have thought he'd got a new farm. If you're not rotating at all, just split your farm in two to start out. Just split it in two. I challenge you to do that. I did it in Germany, in East Germany. I got guys putting up some wire now. I'm just tickled to death. I think he gets it. It's less stress on your animals at the start. If you're not rotating at all and you all of a sudden lock them down in this small area, that's going to be tough on them. It's going to be tough on you. So how often do you move them? It all depends on the growing season. In the springtime, you might want to move them through your farm in 30 days. Plink, plink, just watch. I record all my rainfall. And you can do the same. There's a chart out there. It's cheap. It's from HMI, Holistic Management International, and has a spot for every day of the year to record where your cattle are and what rainfall you get. Go to HMI, and it's called the Planned Grazing Chart. And you'll get a whole web of them. I think there's 25 in there for like $14. So you have a growing season chart, and you'll have a dormant season chart. It's really good for recording. When was the last time the cows were in paddock number 1 up by the house? Well, all you got to do is look in your chart. If you're just writing scribbly marks in one of these, it's hard to keep up with it. I mean, I can't remember my name hardly. I've got to write it down. The older you get, isn't that right, John? Yeah. So the moisture, if you're getting a lot of moisture, by gosh, you can move them fast. You need to spread them out. In England, in the wintertime, you're getting a lot of rain. It's puggy. You got to even give them bigger. You need to move them faster. Make sure the plants are recovered. How do you know if the plant's recovered? Look at the tip of it. It's got to be a point like a pencil on the very end. If it's flat, like the top of that pin from the last grazing, in other words, it's still got a flat spot on the top of the grass, that plant is still trying to recover, and you're going to put cattle back on that? You can do it, but it's going to hurt you. You got to remember the most vulnerable time of a plant in its entire life is right after it's been grazed, and you've left the animals there another day or two, and they come back and they take that second bite. They take the second bite off that plant. Oh, it kills you. Folks, we're just taking the top 30% of the plant, and we're gone. Now, do we get the top 30% off of every plant? Heck no. You can't do that. But I bet you we're getting 65 to 70% of them. We're gone. But people go, but Greg, those others didn't get grazed. I'm happy with that, because the next time the cattle come into that paddock, guess where my litter's coming from? Those mature plants. They're going to trample some of that on the ground. Keep it simple. I start with 1 move a day. If you're working in town 40 hours a week and you don't get home till dark every night, maybe move them once a week if you're not moving them all. Just make it compatible with you and your family. Okay? If you raise your stocking density up, you've got to move them more often. Do they act satisfied when you move them? Listen to them. Are they bawling? Are they running around? They shouldn't be doing that. Look for that death triangle. And if you're getting a lot of health issues in your baby calves, all of them are getting pink eye, or you're treating them for pneumonia, there's something going on. And it's probably something you've done to the cow. You've limited the amount of energy going into that cow. The quickest way to fix that is to get the pH right. If you can keep the pH in the urine of the cow as close to 7 as possible, we carry pH paper. You don't have to walk up behind the cow and do that. Get you a piece of pH paper. When it goes on the ground and it's on a grass leaf, you can't measure the pH of a cow if the urine's on bare dirt. It's got to be on a grass leaf. Touch that and then come back to your color code and see how close you are to 7. Cattle can't get sick. Cattle will breed if you can keep that thing in the 7s. It's tough to do, I'll warn you. Things to look for, the areas beyond your hot wire. If they're reaching under the wire to graze, they shouldn't be doing that. You got them in there too tight. You haven't moved them soon enough. If you got a lot of bare soil or spot grazing is where you got grass this tall, you've got grass this tall, and it's all over the whole paddock. There, what you did is you put them in such a big area, the cattle were just selecting out the very best. You didn't put them in there tight enough, and you left them there too long. Trailing. This trailing, you'll get that if you leave them too long. A trail is a trail back to the water or to the mineral. It's bare dirt. And in my country where we got rolling hills, if you get a bare dirt trail, guess what you get? A rut, a deep one. And I mean, it can get that deep in about a year's time. So we don't have trails anymore. No more trails. There it is. So they reached under the fence. They took too much. And that's because the cattle were hungry. Those poor cows risked shocking their neck to get another bite because I didn't give them a big enough area. That's my fault. Look at that paddock, folks. It looks like I took a lawnmower. You don't want it looking like that. Maybe in the winter when you're doing the last round around your farm, but I sure don't want that. Look how short that plant is. It's got to get back to that. If you don't get a rain, I'm done. I'm done for the whole growing season because I was stupid enough to take it down that short. Don't do that. But, yeah. There you go. That's beautiful. People say, but Greg, look at all those weeds. I'm like, yeah. That's good food. That's good food. I've got all my soil covered. My cows are fat. The manure piles are stacked up nice. I'm a happy camper. Grass gets away in the spring, don't hay it. And I can't say this enough, folks. You will get scared. You will. You'll get scared. That darn grass will get going in front of your cows, and you just freak out and like, I got to get the mower out. I've got to get my hay baler. If I don't, I'm going to go broke. And you'll roll up all that hay out there, and then you won't get a rain. You won't get a rain. Now, depending on how big an area that was, you don't have any grazing for the rest of the summer. Don't do that. Leave it out, go back to restart it in the spring, and start grazing again. I like to call this our savings account. That's what it is. It's our savings account. There's a mature paddock that was grazed in the July drought of 2012. Since we've been keeping records in Missouri, that was the worst drought that ever hit the Midwest. That was a bad one. Folks, there was people waited so long to destock that when they loaded their animals up, they were so thin, and they brought them into the livestock barn, they told them to take them home. We do not have a buyer for your cows. I don't think there's a darn thing wrong with praying for rain. I do it, but it's not a good management strategy. I know how much forage I've got in front of me. I know my plants aren't regrowing behind me. Nothing's growing back. I have got to do a couple things. Either magically find some more forage that maybe I've accumulated somewhere, or sell some animals. The longer you wait to sell animals in a major drought, the more of them you're going to have to sell, and the price goes down. because everybody, folks, 2012 was one of the most profitable years we ever had. Because we sold all of our grass-fed bees. We sold a semi-load of grass-fed bees. They weighed 883 pounds. To be finished, they needed to be about 1,000. And Jan's like, what are you doing? My wife, I said, I'm selling them. Well, what are we going to do for grass-fed beef? I said, don't worry about it. We're trying to survive. And we sold them to a guy in Minnesota that had lots of rain. He finished them out. He gave me a great big check, and I just felt so good seeing all my calves go down the road. It took a big load off my pasture. So in a drought, what you're trying to do is you're trying to preserve your best cows. You're trying to preserve your best bulls and your best replacement heifers. Sell the rest of the stuff. Sell them. Get rid of them. Large herds, we get more impact. Improvement comes faster, more microbes. You get more animal impact. You know, when I first heard Ian speaking from Africa, he was in Colorado, and he's given these numbers. At that time, he had 4,000 cows. He's putting them on 40 acres, and I had my calculator out, and at that time, we had about 70 cows. I'm like, Ian, I can do in Missouri exactly what you're doing in South Africa. I can get my cows the same density, and I can build all this soil and have this humus and just be wonderful. He just said, no, you can't, chap. I'm like, yeah, I've already done the math. He goes, you don't have 4,000 head. He said, you don't have a 4,000 horsepower engine. And so what he was saying is that the more animals that you can put together, the more money you will make. If you got 3 herds going around your farm at the same time, shame on you. Put them together, especially if it's all one farm. I was in East Germany. I'm picking on Germany again. I'll pick on the United States. I do consulting in all the United States. There's 7, 8 herds, and they're all on the same farm. I can see them from standing in one spot. There's a herd, there's one, and they'll have reasons for all those herds. Oh, those are my stockers. Oh, those are my replacement heifers. Oh, that's my prize bull with this group of cows. Oh, there's my other prize bull with this group. They're going broke. They're going broke, and they don't even know it. The more herds you have, the shorter recovery period you have. And when you get in a drought, the biggest tool you have in your toolbox is to put them together quickly so you can have a longer recovery period. Please, trust me, it works. There's a fat beef. For those of you all just getting started in grass finishing, look up here on the tailhead. You like to have that fat around that tailhead. The brisket needs to be full. You like to have that big old gut on the animals, and they need to have lots of wrinkles in their neck. You notice that animal doesn't have a lot of air between its belly and the ground. Those are the animals you can make a good living on grass. We don't raise grain. We're not cropping. We're not doing it, and I'm not beating up on cropping. But if you're not cropping and you're trying to make a living with livestock, get livestock that can make it 100% on forage. And the taller they are, the harder it is to do that. Okay? Did you all know that for every 100 pounds that you go over 1,000 on a cow, for every 100 pounds of weight that you increase your cows, you're losing 2% fertility. So if you go from a 1,000-pound cow up to 1,500, that's 10% across your herd. 10% of your cows may not breed back just because they're too darn big. They can't get enough energy out of your grass. Remember, the hardest thing to produce on grass is what? Milk. That's right. Which one of those bulls do you want to own? Well, I can tell you this one. This is a $10,000 registered bull. They had semen in the refrigerator, in their freezer, one of those liquid nitrogen tanks. They were proud of that bull. I mean, I couldn't see over the top of him. He was about that tall. Look at all the leg under him. Look at his big old bones, great big old bones. This bull, I bought that bull down in Chihuahua, Mexico for a client in Houston, Texas. And he's never had anything but grass. Look at that darn thing. Is he a chunk of meat or what? You know what that Mexican farmer did? He was an American. He went down there in the 1930s and he put together 500 cows. This is a big ranch. It's 40,000 acres. And he selected only the cows that wouldn't lift their head up when he walked in the crowd. That's what he did. And he did that for 60 years. He's in the Beef Cattle Hall of Fame in the U.S. now. His name was Billy Feenan. And Billy just sat up on the crowd, and he would clock the cows when they came out of the head catch. If they ran out of the head catch, he just got rid of them. I've never was around a group of cattle that were so tame in Mexico as these were. Our cows are the same way. You can walk in them, they're not going to bother you. But those cattle have been, and for years and years, he just picked the very best cattle, and that's what he got. This is our soil food, and so when we didn't buy this, well, we bought the other part of this farm, but this is a farm that we leased. You can see there's the stump. So it was all covered with eastern red cedar right here. And the stumps are still out there. We cut the trees off, hauled them off, and now we're putting down the soil food, okay? And that thing is being pulled by an ATV, just a 700-pound ATV. But those bales weigh 1,500 pounds. They got the netting on them. But see, you just drive this spike into the side of them. This is a tool I think you all should. Man, if I lived here and it was wet and puggy, I'd be looking at building one of these. I've got $250 in that. And I tell you what I'll do. Anybody that emails me, I'll give you the plans for it. You can build one. So there we are. We took the hay and spread it out all over the paddock. And there's the broom sedge. See this? See that light-colored grass in there? That's broom sedge. This farm had been severely abused. But look what we did. We put the cattle on it. Folks, every manure pat's a dollar bill. I'm a wealthy man. Count the manure pats in that picture. And then, wasn't too much later, I found that. Isn't that beautiful? Look how shiny those earthworms are. There wasn't an earthworm on that whole ridge. But if you build it, they will come. There it is. There's a close picture of it. If it's solid out, I'll use my little truck. If it's not solid, I use the ATV. But see, these just slam into the side of it, and it's got to come along. You could put a hydraulic winch on it that hooks to a battery and pull them up that way as well. I use a come along. And so when we get to where we want to unroll them, we just take the come along off, it falls on the ground, and we take off. And this chain keeps that bar from backing out of the bale as you're unrolling it. That's what we use in our silvo pasture areas. We've got stumps out there that tall. You don't want to put a pickup out there. But that feeder, that roller will just go right over the stumps. It works really well. There we are. It's the snow on. The snow was so deep that we couldn't, I didn't have a tractor back then. The snow was so deep that we built a snow plow that goes on the back of that little truck. I put an intern on there, and we plow some snow. So we made all these windrows moving the snow. Then we unrolled our hay in the windrows, and we fed 350 head of cattle that way. Look at that. So I don't have to haul that out of there in the springtime. Folks, it's cold out there. There's snow. The cattle are perfectly comfortable. They got a nice winter hair coat on them. Our cattle, if I had to put them in a barn, I'd be treating sick cattle all winter. Because those darn things get too hot in there, and they walk out in the cold air, they're going to get sick. They far prefer laying out. And this gives them a nice dry place to lay down. You'll go out there in the morning, and they're all laid down on those strips. And what's the cow do when they stand up? They poo. They poo. But here's the thing. There's the next day over there. So we may unroll 5 or 6 days of feed in one morning, so we don't have to do it every day. The next day we just unroll a wire and expose them. So it's a little bit like strip grazing forage or you're strip grazing hay until the snow melts off, and then we're back grazing right again. Okay? That kid's 6'1". That is sweet clover. It puts down 250 pounds of nitrogen per acre. Folks, we're starting to see quite a bit of that come onto our farm. I'm excited about nitrogen that I can capture with legumes. I didn't have to buy it. There's a very athletic sheep. That's called the Barbados blackbelly. It's a hair sheep. But, we bought these out of Texas. We gave $60 for those darn things. Let me tell you the economics of sheep. $60, she gave me 2 white lambs. We put a St. Croix parasite-resistant ram on these Barbados black bellies. Folks, we get $250 for a ewe lamb. Do the math on that. If she has twin lambs, twin ewes. That's $500 on a $60 investment. Can you make a living on the land doing that? Absolutely. We get $250 for a grass-fed lamb, a grass-finished lamb. That ewe, you can take a ewe lamb that's born in the spring on pasture, and I need to get going, and you can put a ram into them at 7 months. They have 5 months gestation. They're going to give you a baby lamb when they turn 1 year old. You cannot do that with cattle. So those of you who have smaller properties, I'd be looking at sheep. There's some of our solar builders. There's some of our litter bank. The cattle laid on the ground. That's what came back after taking some of the trees out. This is what we're doing with our pigs. So the pigs come in and root it up just a little bit in our savannas. I go in there with a cover crop. That's a 9-way species, and that's what came up. Then we bring the cattle in behind that. There the cattle are going to work. This is a public road. We're dumping 300 head on a public road, but we got it blocked. Nobody can come through there. I don't do that anymore. Because I had a little woman raise up her hand and said, Mr. Judy, what are you going to do when an ambulance comes? I about had a heart attack. They would probably own my farm. That's what would happen. So we don't do that anymore. That's what you can do with we talked last night about clover. If you increase the stock and density, and we did on that paddock, that's what came back. I didn't sow that. This is a riparian zone. Everybody says, keep your cattle out of the creeks. Well, yes, if you leave them there all year, but if you beat it up and leave, that's what happens. So we can't just put a Band-Aid on it and say, this is what happens. No, it all depends how long you leave them there. This is our water crossings for the creeks. So when the water comes up, this tin will float up to the top and let all the logs go underneath. And then when the flood goes back down, this is where it stays. So we don't have to worry about water gaps anymore. There's our hair sheep flock in the springtime. They're lambing. There's our water. We like to give our cattle nice, clean water. And I'll warn you, on a hot day in Missouri, you better have that over the top of it. That's called my predator. If you don't, there'll be a cow standing in it. And she'll break the float off. Now you got a $100 water bill. There's a little one. This little tank is watering 385 head. Can you believe it? But this is the key. I think you all really ought to look at this. This is a sidewall out of a tractor tire. Actually, it's an earth-moving tire. If you will put that little tread on each side of your tank, and you notice I've got this is a 50-foot hose. I've run it out from my hydrant, so I'm getting my fertility out in the middle of the field. Folks, that darn sidewall keeps those cows from pugging around your tank. If you don't put that down, in a 12-hour period, 380 head around that tank, the mud's going to be that deep, and the cows are going to be up to their chest. I'm serious, this works, and you can move that with your tank across your farm. We only have one water tank for the whole farm, and it's just moved from paddock to paddock. But it's a 60-gallon tank. I just dump the water and move it to the next one. Use a Job Megaflow. The Job Megaflow valve is the best valve out there for pressurized water. This is a picture of our bigger tank. There's our tire tanks. That's an earth-moving tire buried in rock. And I love those. You've got to put rock around them, though. If you don't, you have a mud pit. I love tires. There's my cover crops that I drilled into fescue. That was about at probably 8 to 10 days. There it is at about 3 weeks. There it is coming on later. And there it is when we grazed it. It had 9 different species in there. There they are. You can tell I'm a really good farmer. Look how I skipped. I'm not very good with a drill. This is Eastern Gama Grass. We don't plant that. It just comes up now. I never saw it until we started mob grazing. Big Blue, same deal. It's a wonderful grass. Dung beetle holes. There's a good manure pat, folks. You like to have that nice little pond in the middle. I like to see my ridges stacked up around the side. That's telling me if that cow's going to breed back, her calf is not going to get sick, and she's putting on weight. I can tell all that just by looking at that manure pad. There's how we do it. I've got a deal on the back. I just throw my post out. There's my intern back there. She's putting the wire on the post, and we're going. There's some Eastern Gama. There's a fat animal. There's some more fat ones. That's an unfair advantage. I'm sorry. But you can take a ewe and get 3 out of it. You ought to be thinking about sheep. We sell guardian dogs, so the puppies are raised with the sheep. We make sure if you're going to get puppies, you get the parvo shots in them. They'll die. I learned that the hard way. Make sure they have their parvo. Then as they get older, they're bonded onto the sheep. There's a cattle drive going down a public road. There's my neighbor. It's got soy. That wire's not hot, but my cattle think they think it is. There's some really good, healthy soil. Talked about, all these granulars. You like to see that. That's just really good soil. We had 462 earthworms in one manure pile. We counted them. Here's where we're doing some silvopasture. Instead of cutting it all into firewood, we started doing this. Look at that, and that, and this. We are now selling shiitake mushrooms. So this is another product we're growing on our farm. I'm up to, I think we're up to 1,900 logs now. Folks, we're getting $10 a pound. They flush 3 to 4 times a year. One log and one flushing will put out a pound, $10 a log, do the math. There's pretty good money in shiitakes. There's my fly program. We've got 450 tree swallow houses up across our farms. They're tearing up the flies. And that is our website, greenpasturesfarm.net. And with that, we may have time for a question or two. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Greg. That was just brilliant.
Okay. Till November in Missouri, if we get a hard killing frost, one of the things that's helping us, sir, is we've got a lot of insulation under there. And so when my neighbor's grass is already killed out, it's not growing, ours continues to grow because we've got a lot of heat trapped under there. And those plants don't even know it's wintertime. They just keep on growing. So that's a huge benefit of planned grazing. So based on that, we always put in also a 30-day drought reserve. So in the springtime, if we don't get any rain, I've got to have that drought reserve there. And you can plan that in the fall because you know how many acres of grass you have. You know how many cow days you have. You know how many animals you have. Sell some of them if you need to. That's a hard thing for a farmer to do. You mean I got to sell some? Yeah. But it's cheaper to sell some in the fall than to try and take too many cows through the winter and eat all your grass down to the concrete. Don't take it all. And I used to be an advocate, it's dormant, take it all. No. Make sure you leave some residual out there to catch that winter snow and rain, and your pastures will thank you in the springtime. It's going to cost you 2 weeks of grazing in the spring. 2 weeks. That's how slow your pastures are going to be to wake up if you take it all down like this. Because you've removed the growing point on your pasture. Yep. There was a guy back here. Yep.
The issue of shading in summer.
The what?
The issue of shading. People say, I go to meetings and people say, you can't mob graze.
You're going to have to hold it closer to you. I can't hear you.
All right. The issue of shading in summer. I go to meetings and people tell me, you can't mob graze, you need shade. Do you think people are confusing that with high urea blood nitrogen levels and consequently high protein levels in the grass?
Well, the more chemical nitrogen you use is going to make that problem worse.
Well,
we don't use any of that.
No.
We never have any issues. I mean, there's a lot of fake news out there that's being spread around, and we have people that come to our grazing school. We had one guy come for 6 years. He never did anything because he was afraid to make a mistake. Folks, you're going to make some mistakes. Get started tomorrow.
I'm always accused of not giving my cows shade.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, I think we probably have to stop there because we've
Yep.
reached the thing. Thank
Right.
you so much. Please, another round of applause.